everyone, and welcome to Reap the Spoils. I'm Mark Sullivan.
I'm Delilah Lugo.
And I'm Jason Kwasnicki.
And we're talking about Yakuza, right? That's what we're talking about today?
My
little
bad.
soon
No,
for that, isn't it?
No.
Nani?
No.
What are we, Delilah, what are we
Any-
talking about today?
We're talking about not a video game, but a show based off a video game. The Last of Us.
An old demon has reached out from the depths of the hells to drag us down.
And that demon's name is Jason Kwasnicki. This snuck up on me. I kind of forgot that The Last of Us Season 2, HBO's The Last of Us adaptation, forgot that Season 2 was coming out and started airing, and Delilah hit us up and was like, I have so many things to talk about 2 episodes in, and it's like, okay, well, so here's what we're gonna do for the next few episodes. We're gonna be bringing you shorter episodes covering a few episodes at a time of The Last of Us Season 2 until its conclusion, and we'll have an episode probably on that finale talking about the finale and the season as a whole. So look forward to a few episodes covering this season of television, rather than waiting for it all to be over and trying to cover it all in one go. I think this will make for an interesting, this is, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I like the weekly format of television.
As opposed to binging, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I do not like binging. I loathe binging. I've never really been a fan of it. And this allows a weekly cadence allows for, the water cooler effect.
Yeah, it lets you process.
Lets you process, talk. I don't know if either of you watched Severance, but man, watching that week
I've been
per
meaning
week,
to.
No.
oh my god, watching that show is amazing, by the way. I would love to do an episode
I
with
hear.
Severance if you guys ever want to, but that's not even video game
Your
related.
weekly TV showcast.
No, I agree with what you're saying, Mark. The only problem is a lot of writers have readjusted to the binge model and now are struggling to go back to writing sufficient episodes for a weekly basis. Yeah.
I don't think we're struggling. I think in the past few years, some showrunners, some writers, they've really swung back and been like, no, that this is the format, this is how it should be, and let's get it
I'm
done.
not saying all. I'm just saying there are a few, I have a few in mind, but no, I do hope we get back into that weekly cadence model.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of shows that I watch do that, and I love it. I love it. Anyway, Reap the Spoils is a semi-monthly spoiler cast. Not going to be monthly for the next few weeks, where we usually play a video game or we'll watch something that's video game related, and we'll come back here and talk about it, and we're going to spoil it. We're going to talk about everything that happens. So that being said, if you haven't watched the first 2 episodes of The Last of Us Season 2, those episodes are titled Future Days and Through the Valley. If you have not watched those 2 episodes, pause this episode, go and log in to your Max subscription and watch those 2 episodes, and then come back and listen to us spoil them, talk about them.
And also, keep in mind, we have episodes posted for The Last of Us Part 1, The Last of Us Part 2, and the first season of The Last of Us.
That's
right. If you want to listen to hours of us opining on The Last of Us,
you very well could do that.
And you might want to do that before we delve into here.
Yeah,
so that we don't have to go back and reiterate hours and hours of opining.
I'll also say that we obviously have played The Last of Us Part 2. That doesn't necessarily mean you, the listener, has played The Last of Us Part 2. So we're collectively going to have to be very careful not to spoil anything past the episodes that we are talking about, which is already a little muddy with how the episode's narrative is structured versus how the game story is structured. And we'll talk about that, because I think that's fine to talk about. But as far as like story beats that happen past the points or outside of the points that we've seen in these first 2 episodes, don't worry, we won't spoil them here, right, guys? We won't spoil them.
We'll try. I'll dance around certain points.
Yeah.
What makes though? I know you guys have probably heard many podcasts talking about this game, this show, the first 2 episodes, especially with the big turning point. But we all have had very different opinions about the Last of Us game.
Yeah.
And I think generally the audience has been split on it. So it's kind of nice to have like all the different perspectives in one podcast. Where I
It's
feel
been
like most
interesting.
podcasts.
It's been interesting to see comments on certain podcasts and talking shows, whatever, about this show on YouTube of people who didn't play the game seeing this for the first
Oh, I
time.
would love to
Actually,
actually see that.
I would be interested to
I,
hear
I
those
can I
takes
can
too.
send some to you guys. It is genuinely interesting, especially because they come to some of the same conclusions that I did. But
Oh,
Ah,
I
okay. Okay.
digress. And
Anyway,
To Delilah's points about it being divisive, I am the only one here of us three that had a comment on our YouTube video that said, "Go Team Jason." And
I,
as the resident receiver of nasty comments, I am to this day very proud of that.
yeah,
Although
yeah.
I will say the general audience, I feel like is more on your side and has your perspective than like mine or Mark's. I
Well,
think.
Doesn't have
I
to be a
will.
contest. Yeah, yeah.
We'll talk about it in a moment, but just final spoiler warning. Like we're gonna talk about the first two episodes of The Last of Us season 2, available on Max, HBO, their platform. So yeah, this is your final warning. Okay. And I guess just to go back to what you just said, Jason, or maybe it was Delilah. I don't remember. My opinion of The Last of Us Part 2 has kind of gone more toward the middle in the past in recent years. Like I've definitely come around on a lot of the criticisms and recognize that yeah, there's some, there's some legitimate things to look at and raise an eyebrow at. So, but that'll be interesting to see as the season goes on how that's all portrayed. Um, so that being said, the first thing I personally want to talk about is that opening scene for the very first episode. I didn't like it at all. Um, this is the scene with Abby and her friends, Owen, Manny, Mel, and Nora,
Mhm.
at the gravestones outside the hospital,
The
grieving.
grave of the fireflies, not related to the animated Japanese
Oh,
film.
good lord. Yeah, it really is the grave of the fireflies, isn't it? Good Jesus Christ.
No
Um,
radiation poisoning.
yeah, I didn't like that scene. I thought it was unnecessary and thought it gave away kind of what was coming next. And I feel like if they had left it out and there was no Abby and company until the very end of the episode when they're trudging through the snow toward Jackson holding guns, I think it would have been a much more effective like a much more effective cliffhanger to leave us on, right? Like who are these people? We kind of know from the very first scene. And I felt like the performances too, like I think every other thing that Caitlin Dever did in her role as Abby in these two episodes was good, but this whole thing where it felt like they were all just reading lines, and her mention of like wanting it to be slow was just like, come on, man. This just seems unnecessary.
If I have to give to start with a positive for this show,
Mhm.
the actors and actresses for all the major side characters are really giving good performances. They are very good. They are unfortunately not working with very good material, but we'll get to that. What's her name?
Caitlin Dever.
Caitlin Dever, who's playing Abby. Genuinely good, genuinely giving it her all, and it was especially um, noticeable when I found out that apparently a few weeks before this shooting, she lost her mother. The shooting of the
Uh,
show, she
Yeah.
lost her mother to cancer. So
Oh man.
it is pretty. As much as I have criticisms of the show, she is giving it her all, and you can see that emotion in her performance. So credit where credit's due.
I I want to let Delilah talk. I just want to before it leaves my mind. Like my opinion of the performances in this show is pretty similar to my opinion of the performances in the first season. Which is that anytime they're working with like new material, new lines, new scenes that weren't in the game, it's fantastic. Anytime they're reading the script verbatim from the
Mm,
games, and this might just be because we're intimately familiar with the script of those games, the performances in those games, it just feels
Right.
like they're reading lines and it doesn't come across right. It might be personal bias. It might just be like that's not how it goes in my head. It's going a different way and it doesn't it just feels off. But
Hence why I emphasize major side characters. Yeah.
well, yeah, but even with the main cast, when there's new scenes, we'll talk about it in a moment. But like anytime there's new scenes with the main cast, I think it's great. I think a lot of the new stuff, the original stuff, is like fantastic. With the exception of the opening scene of the first episode, I really did not like that scene and felt it would have been far better without it. But Delilah, I want you to talk because I know you have a lot of thoughts.
no, I mean, for the first episode, I actually left the entire episode, and I think
Okay.
it started with that first scene pretty low. Like I was like, I don't know how I
Yeah.
feel about this. Like the structure of it, I feel like it's gonna reduce the intensity of the big moment that's gonna happen, and I feel like things are moving along really fast, and I couldn't even tell like what character was who at a certain point, except for Abby, right? Because I didn't like look up casts, prior to watching the show. I just watched the show, and I'm like, well, who are these? Like, who's that? Hey, isn't that the like girl that's gonna be in the the new Naughty Dog game. I was just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
very confused by like who played what character, but I was like, all right, that's fine. I know where they're going with this. It's not important now, I guess. But I feel like in the game, not spoiling later stuff, but there was a lot more like you're starting to get to know the relationships between the characters. Whereas here, it's just like, yeah, this is what we're here to do. We're gonna kill Joel. This is what's gonna happen. And I'm just like, wow, they just kind of like spit that out pretty quickly and immediately. And I think maybe in hindsight, I can see that working better as like in terms of story structure. But I think I personally resonate more with actually getting to know those characters a little bit more before that big moment happens. So I could just be like, well, what the hell?
I almost think that's what they tried to accomplish with having that opening scene was like but it removes that mystery, right? Like it's right outside the hospital. They're grieving for the people that were killed and they're talking I don't remember if they explicitly say they oh yeah, didn't they describe Joel because she knows what he looks like and that's who she's
Yeah.
going to look for. Like we know right off the bat who she wants to kill and kind of why she wants to kill him. It
Yeah.
just
Although,
it
and this
completely
might be a
removes
small
that
nitpick,
mystery.
but in that scene they explicitly say the Fireflies are done. So presumably they're the last ones. So who did they get the information about what he looks like from? But
Well,
that's
they were there at the facility when he showed up. Like they knew who he was and what he looked
but
like.
apparently they said none of them knew except for Abby. But it's not really. Again, this is just a writing nitpick, but it was something I noticed when. Why did they say the Fireflies are? I don't know. We'll see where the
Well,
show as a whole is going, but
I think I well if I mean this might be conflating the game with the show, but I think like that was basically where all the Fireflies were headquartered at the time. Um, what was the Salt Lake City hospital.
Mhm.
So for Joel to have killed everyone in that hospital, save for them, they would be the last ones left.
Yeah.
So that's
I
probably just
guess.
what they're supposed to be. But and also keep in mind, Jason, this is a post-apocalyptic world where they don't have cell phones. They can't
Well,
just
I very much had
call
that
up
in mind.
HQ.
The show doesn't remember that it's in a post apocalyptic world, but we'll get
What?
into it.
Oh Jesus Christ! Okay. um. All right. Well, I mean, what else do we want to talk about from I guess the first episode if we want to go
Uh,
linearly?
I think like things just moved along really fast, establishing the relationship between Dina and Ellie and Jesse, and the turmoil that her and Joel have. I prefer. Okay, yeah, maybe I didn't need to like throw snowballs to practice my gunplay, but um, there were certain things about like what was happening in Jackson and like what they built together that was more apparent in the game than in the show. But I get it for like you can't have like all those like environmental details in a show as much as you could in a game, so it makes sense from a show perspective. But for me, it was just like it was too fast to the point where when the episode ended, I was just like, damn, like I don't know how I felt about that. I don't think it was very good.
To the
Wow.
point where they got pristine houses with no wear and tear. Everybody's clothes look nice and fresh out of the laundry and ironed. No wear and tear. Everybody's clean.
All right, now
They've
you're
got
nitpicking.
they've got gas guzzling construction machines. They talk about power lines. Now, I don't remember in the first season if they explained that Jackson is powered by a dam nearby. I don't remember that was from the game. I don't
I don't
remember
know, because it's kind
if
of
there was a
hard to
scene in the first season.
like
But
to what Delilah said. Like it's kind of hard to like do any environmental storytelling when you're not in control. When it's just a television show that's got to kind of bring you from plot point to plot point.
I guess
Um,
what I'm getting at is that whenever you're within the settlement, um, you wouldn't, if you didn't already know, you would not be able to tell it's a post-apocalyptic setting.
I mean, I guess, but like they I don't know. Is it really just that the fact that they don't establish where they're getting electricity, where they're getting power from, that
Well,
is your sticking point, or
you would assume that diesel and gasoline would be a scarce resources. They got fucking all these construction machines doing shit. They're building out all the buildings look in perfect new condition, mint. They're closed. Like nothing. There's not even any talk about gathering resources. In the game, I believe you do see like some cattle and stuff herded up. The guy just gives her a steak sandwich. It's like, where are the cows that they're raising?
well, again, though, I don't think we.
There's no feeling that this is a settlement that is struggling to survive in the wilderness. It's just like this is a town, a modern town. You've
Yeah,
got you've got a scene with a therapist. If you are fucking
bro.
in a settlement in the post-apocalypse, you cannot waste the human body on being a fucking therapist. She's
No,
out there
I
working on
mm,
constructing all these buildings that you need built.
see. I
A therapist
disagree.
is a fucking first world job.
Hold on, hold no, I don't agree with that because we're in a post-apocalyptic world here. People have seen some shit. If
Yeah,
someone
but
is
when the
trained, if someone is trained to handle a job like that, I think that's a valuable position
that is,
in
but
a
you have to
settlement like that.
understand from and we can get into like how she's a fucking terrible therapist who clearly doesn't understand how
Well,
psychotherapy works. But when the hierarchy of needs is thrown into chaos, introspection, this is just fundamental psychology 101, human nature. Introspection, which is what psychotherapy deals with, goes out the window. Your animal brain kicks in.
Oh yeah,
So, like,
post-apocalyptic therapy, bro. If that's what it's
yeah,
like, it's basically just talking to your sibling and telling them how they are.
but
You
not to
know?
mention
they've got an actual
if
trained therapist though. I don't know. I think it's
yeah,
fine.
any
Don't need to.
psychotherapist who takes on a client that they have a conflict of interest in clearly doesn't understand how therapy works.
Well,
Yeah, I
If
mean,
quote
I think she was his therapist before the conflict of interest came in. I don't if anything, maybe that relationship should have concluded with with the event of Joel supposedly putting Eugene down, presumably after he had gotten bitten and turned. Um, but I don't know. He still has shit that he needs to talk about, and she's the only one technically trained to do it. So
speaking from a therapist perspective,
that's true.
I am a therapist, and I
Yeah.
can tell you that is all kinds of violations to everything that we're ever taught. We
right,
will lose our license for that. However, who's keeping her accountable at this point? You know, so
There's no
she's doing.
authority to keep her
Yeah,
accountable.
she's doing. I guess she doesn't need to do that, but she is, and that maybe no one else can. But it is bad. Okay, the ending where she like confronted him about him not being open about it. Performances were very good, but I actually liked the
Oh,
therapist, like
Catherine
performance wise,
O'Hara is amazing. All
yeah,
right, like
fantastic.
she's an OG, yeah,
yeah.
which
Like
made
the
that scene all the
dialogue,
more disappointing. Yeah,
Oh, come on, I
the,
didn't
the
think it was bad.
the dialogue was great, but yeah, you never want to bring up your own issues in someone else's therapy, especially just she just gave him he just gave her like fucking tons of weed, like you know,
And,
he
well,
paid for that
yeah.
time and she capitalized on it. She should have given him like a dime bag, like all right, here I use you as a therapist for a little bit. Here's a dime.
to quote the late great Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting, trust is key to a relationship. And then the kid's like, what is trust? Trust is life. Anyway, go watch Good Will Hunting. Better use of your time.
All right,
Wow,
come
burn.
on, jeez. God, we haven't even gotten past the first episode. Fuck.
Um, the other thing I wanted to say about the first episode, and this is just, I'm not gonna be one of those dickheads that's like talking about how ugly Bella Ramsey is. I think that's just fucked up. I don't find her believable as an older Ellie. Like her lines are good, like her performance is good at times, but like appearance wise, it's just hard to believe that she aged to the point where
Yeah,
it's a little weird.
that's the one thing. Yeah, that's the one thing, and it's kind of just like something you have to kind of take for what it's worth at face value, because like you can digitally age up a character, and Ashley Johnson can kind of make her voice a little deeper and a little gruffer to indicate that Ellie is aged.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bella Ramsey can't age, 4 or 5 years in less than 2. It's just not feasible. So
Yeah.
it's something I get that as like as kind of a sticking point, but it's also just something that they can't work around it. They would have to recast the actress, and
Yeah.
they're not going to do that. So
Yeah, of
Yeah, I
course. I
mean,
know she can't control it. It's just like a little weird.
yeah, they'd have to wait like more longer to start even filming, and they're
I'm
not going to
telling
do
you right
that.
now, she has the type of appearance that she's gonna look like that her whole life almost. Like
yeah.
just one of those people that doesn't age. What were you
Maybe.
gonna say, Jason?
I said this. I was just going to say that I said this. I remember saying this in our discussion about the first season. Both Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey are horribly miscast, and it was mitigated in the first season because of the Ellie Joel relationship. When you set it up from the beginning that she's basically not talking to Joel and doesn't, or she has a relationship, but she's very clearly angry at him and is staying away from him, and we're just following her. She is fucking insufferable, annoying. Like every attempt at humor with her is unfunny, and
Is it so? This is more from an acting perspective that you're
no, no,
making
no.
this claim.
I think Bella Ramsey's probably a okay, fine actress. It's just the material combined with the performance that she's being directed to give.
Okay.
She
I
just comes
just
off as a child that's supposed to be a 19-year-old.
I just like it I just want to make sure and clarify, like, it has nothing to do with how they look compared to how the characters look in the game.
Let me put it to you this way: she's behaving like the 14-year-old Ellie was supposed to be in part one, but there's no Joel to balance back against her.
Okay.
And especially in the scenes between her and Dina, things that are supposed to be funny are cringe.
Well, yeah, because
There's
I think
nothing
that's
likable
I
about
think that's
Ellie.
by intentional. It's just whether or not you find that cringe funny. I thought a lot of the jokey parts were fine, personally.
Bear BQ.
I thought that was funny. I liked that.
And
I
to be
liked
fair, because
it.
that is a Dina line, the actress actually, because in the game Dina is just a glorified plot device. At least here, Dina has a bit more character, and the actress that plays her is very charismatic.
Yeah, that's Isabella Merced.
Much more likable than Ellie in this depiction.
yeah, I mean, I feel like in the game at this point, like Ellie had matured also in terms of like she chilled out a lot, whereas she was very
Yes,
rambunctious, and I feel like
yes,
Bella's version of Ellie is still
is
very
the same
rambunctious.
14-year-old version, but there's no
Yeah.
Joel to bounce
So
against.
so rather than because I don't want this episode to devolve into just nitpicking like actors and performances and stuff, but I do kind of want to double back to something you said, where like you mentioned that her Dina's chemistry and her chemistry with Joel, or she's just like a lot more likable, and that kind of comes through in her rapport with Joel. She almost she almost has a better relationship in a father-daughter sense with Joel than Ellie does at that point. And I thought that was an interesting change, because that's not
Yeah.
present in the game. And I kind of liked that. Like, she's the one that's gonna watch Curtis and Viper with Joel later that night, and
Yeah.
she's like very friendly when she walks in, and he's working tinkering with the breaker, and she wants him to teach her how it works and stuff. And
Yeah,
I thought that was an interesting change, and I actually quite liked it, because it kind of plays into some like a meta narrative thing where she's kind of almost unintentionally supplanting Ellie's role in the story and in Joel's life, just by virtue of not having all the baggage
Yeah.
that Ellie kind of has with him. And I thought that was kind of an interesting narrative change.
Oh, yeah, and I think they needed to do that, especially for the fact that in episode 2, he wasn't with Tommy this time, like he was in the game. He
Yeah.
was with
Yeah.
Dina, so they made that like minor connections between them, demonstrated in the show, made that scene a lot more impactful for who's present. Although I feel like, well, we can talk about. I don't want to like spoil anything with Tommy, but there's some things about Tommy later in the game that the
Yeah.
way
Later
they're
in the
telling
game,
the
in the
story
show.
in the show. No,
Oh,
in
I
the
know
game.
exactly where your head's at, Delilah. I have a feeling we're on the same wavelength with the second episode. Yeah.
Because like Tommy is such an important character to how things play out that the way they're writing him in the show has me worried, because it just seems like how are they gonna make things happen in the way that I'm used to, and I'm hoping they do it well anyway,
Yeah.
just like they did between the relationship.
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, obviously.
Well, I feel like we'll have to walk on the bridge a little bit when we talk about episode 2.
Maybe yeah, we'll just have to tread carefully. A couple other things from episode 1. The namely the shindig, the party. This is another one of those moments where the script was like pulled directly from the game, and that's something that I didn't like. But I did think that the Seth confrontation was very well done. And I think the other thing, a couple other things to bring up, the supermarket, and them kind of introducing the stalker enemy like early on. I thought that was a tense moment. One instance where they managed to incorporate some environmental storytelling from the game is the employee of the month being a dog.
Oh
Mm.
yeah.
I thought that was a cheeky, fun way to like incorporate something like that. I quite liked it.
I will
Yeah.
say, just you mentioned introducing this smarter infected. I did
Yeah.
find that interesting, just as speculation on the direction they might take that differs from the game,
Hmm.
because the design of that character, specifically the way it has like a crown on its head, seems very much in line with original ideas that Neil Druckmann had going back to when
Hmm.
he was writing his first early drafts of The Last of Us 1, or not even drafts, just coming up with the idea. Originally, the infected were supposed to be more of like a ant colony with queens. Actually, I think in one of the earliest versions, only the females survived and the actual infection and became like part of the hive. I don't know. He talks about, you can go look up old GDC lectures that Neil Druckmann gave about, the writing of the game back in what,
Yeah, I don't know if I
2013,
actually.
2014. He talks about a lot of this and working with Bruce Straley on kind of finalizing what the world became. But this does seem to be like a queen like
Mm.
creature that might have that higher intelligence that seems to be pulled from those early ideas. I
And
don't know,
we
it's speculation.
Well, that might also play in with the fact that this show's canon as with regards to the infected and how the cordyceps works here versus in the games, trading the spores for the tendrils, the
Right.
vines, the roots, if you whatever you want to call them, and that we get that reveal that they're kind of spreading into the town. They're in that pipe, and no one catches that right away, and that's what leads us kind of into the second episode, um, which had what I thought was a fantastic like siege event going on with the swarm. I don't know. I thought it was interesting, and it was definitely like it was more. Let's put it this way: it was more HBO
Yeah.
than the game ever really got,
Yep.
and that's at the end of the day.
Season 8 Battle of Winterfell HBO. Yep.
Which, like, keep in mind, like, yeah, they're taking a video game and adapting it for television. This is HBO we're talking about. Like, it is going to be different. There are going to be things like that have
Right.
to
So
make it a little
for
more
folks
for.
listening who don't know, this whole battle sequence in Jackson is not in the game.
No, not at
At
all.
all, yeah, no. I just wanted to say a quick thing about the stalkers. I thought that I remember that moment in the game being super like scary, and I feel like
Yeah.
they did a good job in the show adapting it. But I feel like more importantly, that was a really cool moment to believe the chemistry between Dina and Ellie. Like they're both like just down to like do like shit, and um, I don't feel
Down
like you
for
got
whatever.
yeah, down for whatever. I don't feel like you got enough of that in the game. So that's like a positive for the show in terms of like change. But to
Yeah.
go to that like big siege scene, yeah, there were some moments where my jaw was dropped. I was like, "Oh my god, this is so cool." Like
Yeah.
the different ways that they had the wall up and they were letting down the barrels and like exploding them. It was very cool. But then there were some moments in that action scene that I was like, "How?" Um No.
Like all the infected just running by Tommy, not
Yeah.
even bothering
Well,
with him. I
let let
know.
Yeah.
let's start with the beginning. We have a giant fragile wall made of wood. Do we
It's
A, plant
winter. It's
traps?
no, it's
Do
winter.
we
I
create
don't
a
think
catapult that can launch, or do we drop barrels of gasoline right in front of our wooden wall and
it's
blow them up on
it's
fire?
winter. I don't think it would catch on fire. I yeah, I don't think it would be an issue.
You're Tommy. You see a giant bloater running towards the wall that can break it because it's very thin. Do you A, start shooting at it to slow it down? B, start shooting at it and tell everybody else to focus fire it before it gets to the wall? Or C, drop your rifle and start shouting that something is going to break down the wall
I don't
and run
think
off
they
the
would have
wall
given how long it took for them to kill it, I don't think they would have been able to kill it before it reached the wall. He ran so that he could be better prepared and better prepare everyone else for
with a
this for the
flamethrower that does damage over time to the invisible health bar the
All
bloater
right,
has?
Jason, this isn't a fucking video game.
No, it isn't. That's the complaint, is that the plot
Jesus
armor is so
Christ.
thick that the monster dies just in, the dot damage
Oh,
finally kills it just in time as he's cowering.
well, that's
It's television.
honestly, like, for that part when he was cowering, I didn't care that like it died at the perfect time. What I cared is that there was a perfect, and I know that I'm a gamer perspective, there was a perfect ring around the rosy there that he could have just like kept, using his flamethrower and coming around and like luring the bloater. Um,
And
but
he had a
and
gun, so when he ran out of gas, he could have just pulled out his pistol.
Guys, it's television.
well, no, even if it's television though, like don't show me a path that like someone in a TV show could run to, you know what I mean? But more like the thing is like Tommy wouldn't do that as a character. He wouldn't be that fucking stupid to get cornered.
Yeah,
He just
Tommy is
wouldn't.
a fucking badass, as we learn.
Yeah, that was okay. That's the one thing I'll give you guys. Like he knows this town like the back of his hand.
Tommy is
He
young
wouldn't go into
Joel.
a back
Like,
alley and not know that there were barricades set up there. That's the one thing I'll give you guys with
he's a
regards to
Yeah.
younger
this
he's a younger
incident.
Joel. He puts up a friendly face, but he spent years doing brutal shit with Joel.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
also worth noting
that
that
is
he emphasizes the roofs in the scenes beforehand, foreshadowing all this shit. He emphasizes getting to the high ground, to the roofs, but apparently the infected know exactly. The infected are all about the stairs. They know exactly what buildings to go in, what stairs to hit to get on the roofs and fuck everybody up. Like this whole battle sequence, it seems like the town's just fucked, and then we cut away for the other drama shit that happens here, and cut back, and they just won. So to me, it just seems stupid all around.
Like it was fun. I actually enjoyed most of it until the stupid parts, but like it was really nice to see like the fire against like the snow. It was beautiful. The sets in this show are gorgeous. But I do think ultimately it's going to take away from a little bit from like the town hearing about what happened to Joel. Because they're going to be also focused on rebuilding, and I don't know how that's going to balance, but I guess we'll see in
well,
episode
I
3.
mean, what happened to Joel?
Right, and Tommy not being there, which I think, as much as I criticize the game, that him being there for that scene that I guess we'll talk about.
Well, I think we like don't I almost don't want to fixate on the difference of Tommy not being there in the show versus him being there in the game, because we don't know what that necessarily is going to mean for the narrative in episode 3 and further. Like they could pivot further as a result of that. So
It's a fair
I
point.
wanna I wanna push back on criticizing that until we have further information.
Yeah,
And I
that's fair.
especially because I definitely don't want to spoil anything going forward that happens in the game, because who knows, it might still happen in the show, or even better, it might not, and it'll be a moot point. So let's
Sure.
not fixate on that. Let's talk about
Fair
what
enough.
happened. Let's talk about
Well,
what happened.
can I just say real quick
Yeah.
that they're just building Tommy to be more soft than his character is. Like this doesn't feel like Tommy at all so
But I
far, and
think
that's my only issue.
I think that's fine, because they're also building, or they were building Joel up to be softer than he was in the games. Even in season 1, he was a little
Yeah,
softer.
I
He was a
mean
little softer, and here he like
he's in
Joel
fucking
in the video
therapy,
games wouldn't go to therapy. Like this
right?
Joel is, and I think that's great. I think that's fine because at the end of the day, I still feel like he's that same core character. All the same things about him are still there. He's just a little softer, and I think that's perfectly fine. And I think it matches Pedro Pascal a little better, and I
Yeah,
guess
no.
technically matches Gabriel Luna better.
Again, I
As
mentioned
Tommy.
I said this last season, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier. Pedro Pascal is horribly miscast as Joel,
See, I don't agree with that,
especially when
but
he's terrible at accents. Every time he tries to slip in a Reckin or tries to slip in a little Texan like twang to his voice, I just laugh because it sounds so terrible having spent significant periods of time around Texans.
I feel like you're just sensitive to that in general because you also had a problem with Troy Baker doing that as Joel.
No, I didn't. What are you
Yeah,
talking about? Troy Baker did an amazing job as Joel.
if you go back, I think it was the Last of Us Part 2 episode when he says like guitar, you made fun of that and didn't like that.
I do
If I
not remember
remember
that at
correctly.
all.
I could be mistaken, but I kind of remember. I vaguely remember you fixating on that.
You might be talking about Pedro Pascal from season one.
No, no, I was
Okay.
not. Or I
Well,
am
I
not.
was the only reason why I made that point about Tommy being soft is because I just think it's important to note and to be aware that he has a kid.
Yes, yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Made
I
another,
think
yeah, big
it
difference from
was
the which may be why Mark said they might pivot to a different direction because he
Mhm.
yes.
does not have a child in the game.
Yes. So we'll see, you know. I also I oh god, that's something from episode 1. I
He's also
loved.
not as much of a leader figure in Jackson as he is or he's more of a leader figure in Jackson. In the game,
In the
it's really his wife Maria.
yeah, in the
Mhm.
show he like the him giving all the orders and stuff in the one like hall building like I thought that was good, and I loved the dynamic of like his and Maria's son with both like the parents and with Joel. That scene I thought was a lot of fun. Um So I don't know. I kind of like the softer like family feel of the characters. I think it kind of allows us to endear ourselves to them a little bit. Maybe not Jason, but I feel endeared. I do.
Maybe. I was waiting for that little boy to come out with a gun and start shooting the infected. I was like, come on, he's gonna
speaking
do it, right?
speaking of guns, just a real quick
Oh
nitpick,
Jesus
and it's not
Christ!
even a nitpick about the battle scene.
This
It
episode is going to
really
be
stands
so
out.
long if we nitpick every little thing, Jason.
There isn't a single gun discharged in this episode or any episode that I've noticed that has recoil. You can tell it's just VFX. It's not even blanks because when the firing mechanisms lock back, there's no empty spent shell casings that come out.
Yeah, and Jason, most
It's
most action movies or even television shows or
look,
movies that have a gun also have the person firing that gun going well past that magazine's capacity. It's
yes, I know.
television.
I'm mentioning all these details, like going back to the stuff about it not looking post-apocalyptic. They all add up to make it feel very weird and not post-apocalyptic, even though it is.
Okay, so it's mostly just the verisimilitude that you're kind of
Right.
having
There's
an issue
so
with.
many little things that add up to and this is just production design. It's
Okay.
almost as if the production design team wasn't informed that this is a post-apocalypse.
Okay. I don't want to keep getting sidetracked
Yeah, I'll
on these
stop with
Alright.
topics
those
though.
little
Yeah.
things. It's just they're super noticeable, especially when I knew where the story was going. So like I was kind of like
Yeah.
looking at all the little details. Yeah.
All right. Okay. We need to talk about Joel.
Yeah.
um to quote Nakey Jakey, so Joel gets bonked on the head. Um
He gets
he
stabbed in the head this time.
yeah, well, he got bonked on the head too, but
Bonked a bunch.
man, I think that this whole sequence was um brutal, and I think a little maybe even better done than the game. If I'm being honest, it's like I guess because we got to spend a little more time with Caitlin Dever as Abby doing it slowly torturing him to death. Um, I don't know what do you, like. What are your guys' thoughts?
I
Um,
don't know, Delilah. Do you want to take it first?
yeah, so just in terms of like the gore and how much they actually like showed his mushed up brains everywhere face, I feel like was definitely more like gory and impactful. Because I don't think we sat with it as much as we did in the game, which was good.
Yeah.
And just like seeing Bella Ramsey scream like after he gets like the thing in his head, it was all I cried all over again, just like I did in the game. Um, and the most important thing of this scene was them playing the trailer music from when The Last of Us Part 2 was revealed, which is
Yes.
not something that they played in the game. It was just for the trailer, and I remembered crying at the trailer because I thought the song was really good. Like I
That's
actually
Ashley
memorized.
Johnson singing.
Yeah, I memorized the lyrics because I really love like just the entire song, and I was just so excited about The Last of Us Part 2 and the fact that we were getting a sequel and no one expected it at the time. It was like,
Is
oh, so
quick
good.
quick question. I know Jason, you'll know the answer. That's a Johnny Cash song, right?
Which one is this? I don't
The
remember.
the one that played after the whole Joel incident
Do you
and
know the
Ashley
name of the
Johnson was
song?
singing it. I don't. If I knew the name of the song, I could just
I mean,
confirm it myself.
I know they done Pearl Jam covers in the game, and
Yeah. Well,
obviously the first episode's called Future Days.
right.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
actually,
don't.
okay. Well,
Sorry, go
I'll
ahead.
get to the no, I'll get to this at the end. It's not important. So go ahead.
I think you might be right. I think it is. I think there was one or two Johnny Cash songs throughout the game, so it would make sense um, for them to have it in the show.
Yeah, so I thought that was done really well. I also liked the fact that Joel didn't just introduce himself to these people that he doesn't know at all, and that it was just kind of like Dina calling out to him and stuff like that. You know, it makes more sense that Joel would introduce himself, and I didn't really feel that way until I rewatched that scene from the game, and I was like, oh yeah, he actually wouldn't do that. But when I played the game, I didn't really feel that way. I was like, eh, she was a kid, you know, same age as Ellie. Of course, he would be a little more softer to her. But then to introduce himself to like the whole crew, I'm like, yeah, no, that doesn't fit as well. So I do think in the show they did that better. But Caitlin Dever having a heart to heart with Joel, calling him cute, and then bashing his head, it just felt
A
like
James Bond monologue of the villain.
yeah, she had a James Bond monologue.
Okay,
It
but
just
I mean, I don't know. I'm sympathizing here. Keep in mind, like she's been wanting revenge on this guy for 5 years now. Of course she has something rehearsed. She's thought about this for how long? Like,
No, it's
no, I
not.
think it's justifiable.
So I completely agree with Delilah. And again, you know, the heavens are falling from the sky. I'm going to say something positive about the episode. They definitely, in terms of the mechanics of getting Joel to the lodge with them, uh, they didn't make Joel and Tommy look fucking stupid like they do in the game. Um, but the problem with giving us that exposition mark that you were referring to earlier about why Abby and her and company are there, and then having her monologue directly to Joel explaining why, because that's not in the game. In the game, she doesn't explain what's happening. She says a
No.
few, like, she kind of taunts him a bit, and then Joel just says, "Get the fuck on with it." Which he says here too, but after she's done monologuing.
The
yeah,
"you don't get to rush this" line is the same,
yeah.
which
Yeah,
was the one instance where a repeated line from the game didn't bother me. I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
this creates an entirely new problem that makes Joel look fucking stupid, though. Well, not stupid, but it's
What?
and not just me. I've seen lots of other people comment
Okay,
in
what?
this version where she's explaining why she's doing what he's doing. At no point is Joel going to be like, "Well, you know, your dad was going to cut open the brain of my, you know, foster child, essentially, and take her out and kill her for the potential chance of maybe making a cure." Which, as you learn, she's not the first one, and they haven't had any successful attempts. Regardless, we don't need to get into the cure debate. We've had that in previous episodes on
Oh.
prior games.
I mean, they didn't like.
But the
I
point
don't.
is that Joel had ample opportunity to retort and explain to her circumstances, which she obviously, or
It
maybe she's
wouldn't
just
have
choosing not to
mattered. She
understand.
wouldn't have
Maybe,
stopped.
maybe it wouldn't have mattered, but like I would at least have a like if I'm from understanding Joel as I do, he would say something like your father, the fucking doctor that was going to use my daughter as a chimpanzee to test on with her
I don't know.
brain, like
I don't agree with that at all. I don't think he would do that. Why would he do that? Why would he? Because that's essentially him. Like,
to dig in at her that her father was a fucking terrible person, which he was.
I don't think Joel would do
All
that.
right, I'm
I
gonna
think this
be
is just a
careful. I'm gonna
fundamental.
be careful and step back here because this gets into I think, potential
Yes,
spoilers
I don't, and
ahead. Yeah.
I don't think we should.
If
But
you want, if you know the material, go back and listen to our discussions on part 2 of the game, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah, but overall, I agree with the sentiment that them getting to the lodge was definitely like a lot about that sequence was better done in the show than it was in the game. I definitely can agree on that. Um, I I don't think that Joel was stupid for not retorting back
Stupid is not the
with
wrong
a
word.
counterpoint.
More like it doesn't make sense that he doesn't say anything, and then only after she finishes her monologues, he shouts, "Get the fuck on with it," which was a cathartic moment for me for probably the wrong reasons because I wanted her to get the fuck on with it.
Um, I don't. Mark, go ahead. But what do you think? I don't feel like you've.
No, that's basically it. I don't think that he needed to say anything. I don't think he would have said anything under any other circumstances. I think it's not like whatever he could have said in that moment would have changed her mind at all, and I don't think he would have tried to necessarily dig the knife in. He's not a vindictive person. I've never felt that Joel was a vindictive person. He did what he did
Well,
and he
when you
feels
get
he
your
was
leg shot
justified.
out, when you get your kneecap shot out, you might want to get that dig in just out of anger and spite.
I don't know. You might, but I
I
don't know. I don't view
I
Joel
don't
that
know.
way.
Neither of us have had our kneecap shot out.
That's true. Not yet, at least. Let's hope that that doesn't happen anytime soon.
Honestly,
I thought.
honestly, if anything else, just to break up the dialogue a bit and give the audience more content, because again, that entire Abby exposition is for the audience. Um,
Yeah,
but
Right.
it's a television show.
no, I know it's exposition that in the game came much later, but it would have been nice to have something to break it up, so it just wasn't her talking and monologuing for however many minutes it was.
By the way, small correction or no correction. Through the Valley is the name of that song, and it was written by Sean James.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I
So
believe there have been
not Johnny
a
Cash.
ton of cover. I think Johnny Cash might have done a cover. I think a ton of people have done that
I
song.
I mean, Ashley Johnson did a cover
Yeah,
for The Last of Us.
I guess my point with Joel talking back to her is that if they're going in the direction I assume they're going, and it would at least serve to plant some seeds of doubt, even if she goes through with it anyway out of anger. It would
Well,
it would do a better job than the game did of planting seeds of guilt.
that's something I think we'll have to table for
Yeah,
uh
obviously we don't know exactly how the show is going to end up panning out.
right. So I think we're just gonna have to table this one
I'll just say
or
like
that plot point.
more so than the game. It felt like Joel was almost accepting of this happening to him as like, you know what? Yeah, I did this, and I know
Well,
what I did, and I like kind of get why this person's doing this.
and
I'm
here's
old. I can't function anymore. Fuck it.
right, and here's the thing, right? Like, because my wife, when we watched it, you know, when she played the game before this season came, because she didn't want to watch the season and then know what happens and not feel surprised when she plays the game. Um, so she played through the game, and you know, she was devastated by Joel's death. We watched this episode; she was devastated by Joel's death, and she cried too, Delilah, and I was like, you know, kind of like asking why sympathetic. It's like, because it's Joel, and I'm like, yeah, but Joel's not a good person. Like we
No
might
one
like
is.
him, we might sympathize with.
Nobody in the original game was a good
I
person.
know
That's
that,
the
but
point.
listen. Like this character specifically, he's not a good person. Nobody's a good person, but we still sympathize with him because we see his journey, we see where he goes from point A to point B in that first game. So it's like it's understandable to mourn and feel bad for him, but he's at the end of the day not a good person. And no one knows that better than him. So I agree with the sentiment that he feels accepting of what's happened because he knows why it's happening. He knows why he's getting killed, and he probably doesn't disagree with it. But
Also, to
all he knows is that he's justified in what he did, saving
yeah,
Ellie. because he feels wholly just. That's
I don't know if that's the route they're going to
reinforced.
go here, though.
I think it is because
Well, he said
they
it in
reinforced
therapy.
it with,
Because
yeah, I
from the begin,
saved her, and then he leaves therapy.
yeah, but he's also like crying about. I think in this iteration they might go with him just to kind of pour salt on the wound regarding that argument. They might go with him thinking that what he did was bad, but he doesn't care. I don't know. We'll see where they decide to take this.
No, I don't.
But
I don't.
just to,
I think he feels. I think he feels totally justified by it, and that's completely evident by that scene when he's leaving the therapist.
I think also him seeming a bit more accepting is just contextual in the game. Tommy just got bashed over the head, and he's fighting back because his brother is in immediate danger. Whereas here, they just put Dina to sleep, and they make explicit this like stupid fucking code they have apparently that they don't kill
Yeah.
people for no reason, which
I don't think that's a
or no, they
stupid
don't kill
code.
people who can't defend themselves. Whatever the fuck. Apparently, the wolves have a code
Well,
now.
I think it was more so that like they were only seeking revenge on Joel. He's the only one they wanted revenge on. So killing anyone else
No.
would.
Abby says explicitly that the wolves taught her a code that you don't kill people to defend themselves or
Why is
that
that a
can't
big
defend
deal?
themselves.
I don't think that's a problem. Why
Because
is
it's
that a
fucking
problem?
because
Well,
again, like I mean, granted, we'll see the direction that the show goes, I guess, with the wolves, but
I mean, I kind of agree with you, Jason, because it's like, how could you live in this world without having made a
exactly.
rash decision, like killing someone who might be defenseless because you don't know what they're capable of, or you don't know if they're infected or
well,
whatever the case.
if that were the case, though, they wouldn't be defenseless now, would they?
Well, no, like you can have someone that seems defenseless, but you don't know they're defenseless. Like you just kind of reacting. I feel like most of the people Joel killed
It's like
were
the
we
scene in
don't
the
really
first
know
game.
because he didn't take a chance, you know?
Right. It's like the scene in the first game, and I think it was in the show too, when they come across the guy playing, like he's wounded, and Joel knows because I think he even says at one point he was on the receiving end of that
Well,
once,
no, he was on
or
the
he was on the end where he's
yeah,
playing
yeah.
wounded. Yeah,
He
yeah.
was on the other side of that. He was pulling that grift at a point in his life.
Again,
He
just
used to be a raider.
it goes back to the verisimilitude aspect of this is a post-apocalyptic world, and the game had the same problem, not nearly as bad as the show, but the second game that is had this problem.
Um, I will say though the part that bothered me a little bit about before this. Do you? Well, let me even not even say it bothered me. What do you think Joel, knowing Joel from the game and just knowing Joel as a character, do you think if he saw Jackson on fire and having all this stuff that he would have just ran there anyway despite the storm? In the way that Ellie was like and Jesse were so willing to like run to save him. Well, actually Ellie, not Jesse, because he was with her, but then they split up, which I'm so glad that they didn't show the Dina Ellie like in underwear smoking weed thing because I just don't like to see people that I know as children that I consider my daughter at this point of the show slash game in their underwear. No thanks. But anyway, point is, I, do you think that Joel would have gone to help Jackson despite the circumstances, or that he would have went with these strangers to
Well,
their
I think he
settlement?
was.
No,
I think
because
he was
Dina's there.
trying to. Yeah, that
Yeah,
too. Yeah.
I think he was trying to get them to go with him, but also Dina's there, which adds another dimension of, as he says in the episode, you got to look after your own first.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
I think it does distract him though, which, as we said earlier, adds
Well,
to the
yeah,
more believable nature of him finding himself in this situation in the first place.
he keeps looking out the window. He's clearly like concerned about it. He clearly wants to get there as soon as he possibly can, but
Yeah.
safely when with Dina
Like
in tow.
yeah, because like normally he probably would have noticed that all these people are kitted out in fucking military faction. Although apparently Jackson has a full-fledged military armory with like hundreds of fucking semi-automatic 5.56. Like
Oh my
I
god.
don't know.
Well,
Resources aren't an
So
issue
does the
in the
WLF.
post-apocalypse.
What is the difference?
Well, canonically, the WLF took over the Fedra, so they have all the Fedra equipment. They
Fair
rebelled
enough.
against him.
Okay, but
Yeah,
like, who knows? Jackson could have been collecting Fedra equipment. All right, I don't want to keep
yeah. We don't need to.
I
The
don't want
point.
you to keep nitpicking, and I don't want to
Yeah,
keep defending against the nitpicks because I'm like, I don't think this stuff is as big of a deal. it's a television show. I don't think it needs to be as immersive and as consistent as a video game does.
I,
Um,
these are things I had problems with in the second game as well. But
right, and I think it's maybe you could make an argument in the game it would be more important to have those consistencies in check. I feel like there's only so much that they can do in a show to make that stuff make sense consistently. And you just kind of gotta go with it. That's kind of how I feel. I don't know.
Mm.
I don't think a lot of these nitpicks are as big of a deal as you do.
I mean, again, it's going to be harder to judge this because a lot of the criticisms of the way this was handled in the game came from how it fit into the overall story. So we'll have to wait and see until the season's over to really dig into that. I will say one thing I think the game, I am loath to say it did better than the show, um, was Ellie arriving on the scene because in the game with the lighting, how much darker it was, it felt like she was almost descending into this hellish dungeon.
Yeah.
Just whereas in the it just looks like everything else is lit in the show, and I mean it kind of plays out the same way almost. It's just that the darkened aesthetic that is we see in the game, where everything is in shadow. There's very little light. The snow is kind of crept up over all the windows.
Yeah.
It definitely adds to the feeling of the scene.
Just like the weather was like a little stormier in the game and could create that more
Yeah,
moody atmosphere. I can give you that. I can agree with that. The descent part especially, like, I
because they were in
definitely
like a
back with that.
basement in the game, whereas here they're like right at the upstairs
Well,
window gallery.
they were still at a window. Like the window thing was pretty consistent. It was I don't but it was definitely like in the game she descended down to that floor.
Yeah,
I think she kind of came into the lodge from above, and that's kind of why that was
right.
it
That's
was
what I'm
like more of a
saying.
descent. Yeah.
In the show, they're on the upper level, like right by the big window overfacing
Yeah,
Jackson.
I mean, like I said, the room with the big window is the same thing in both. It's just like a matter of where she's coming into the room from. Like I don't know. I
Yeah,
agree with you. Is what I'm trying to
yeah,
say.
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree that the mood it's set in the game is a little better, but I do think overall that that whole sequence was very excellent in the show.
I
For several reasons. Go ahead, Delilah.
I feel like them like having injecting Dina so that she doesn't have to witness the brutality they're about to inflict on Joel,
Yeah.
and them saying like this whole code, and um I think they're trying to really with a strong hand establish that they're like better people, and I don't really like that in a post-apocalyptic setting, but I'll
Yes.
see where it goes because I
Yeah.
know as we get to know them more there's going to be a little bit more like things happening that might gray things out, but I
Yeah.
don't like the whole black and white situation that they're trying to. It's almost as if they're trying to have you pick a side, whereas in the game, I don't feel like they were trying to do that, and I
Oh,
prefer
Well,
that.
it's hard to have this
we'll put a pin
discussion
in
without
that one
spoiling.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna put a
Again,
pin in that.
I'm
and
just keeping it
Delilah.
vague, just to.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. I got you.
No, I completely agree with you, Delilah, and especially more so because we know where that whole thing subplot goes in the game. Um, but yeah, just to generalize, keep broad, the fact that they're kind of making you feel like these are the good guys, quote unquote, in these scenes just comes off as kind of cringe.
Yeah. Um,
I'm reserving full judgment for more information. Go ahead, Delilah.
but I just want to be clear. I liked it. I cried. I was still emotionally impacted, and so I think it was beautifully done. I really liked the song that they added. Um, I just I'm curious to see where they go, and I'm curious about two things. I'm curious about one, how you guys feel about Abby not being like brolic, and also how you guys feel
Not
how
being
you
the Hulk. Yeah.
Again,
not being
it comes down to like Caitlyn Dever would have had to bulk up in a significant in a very short amount of time. I don't really think it
In an
matters.
unnatural
I don't
way. Yeah.
care. I don't give a shit. Like
you
I
don't
don't
think
No,
care.
it's like
no, no.
integral to her
No.
character?
No, I don't
No,
care. It
no.
does not matter. And it
It's
didn't
it's an
matter when
improvement. It's an improvement over the
no,
game.
I don't think that. I don't think it mattered in the fucking game and why people fixated on so much like
I was just
that.
gonna say that, like,
I think
people
it's
were mad when she was
unnecessary.
brolic, and now they're mad that she's not.
Uh,
I guess that's where I
it
was
wasn't that
going.
she was
Yeah,
it was that she was unnatural. It looked uncanny because it's
I
just
don't agree, but
even
we don't
even a
I don't
juicer can't
I
achieve that kind of body with that
I
frame. Yeah.
don't want to get into
What?
this debate. I don't want us to go down this
I
road.
know.
I'll just say I don't
Hey,
care. It does
hey,
not matter.
y'all brought it up.
So you guys don't feel like it's integral to her character, is what I'm
No,
hearing.
No, I
no.
Okay.
don't care.
I think it's an improvement. It takes away that distracting, and I think it allows it to emphasize on the actress who seems to be very talented. This is the first time I think I'm seeing her. So
Yeah, Abby is not defined by the fact that she's muscular. She's defined
yes,
by her actions and her story.
True. Okay, good. Now, the second thing I was curious about is how do you think the audience who hasn't played the game received what happened to Joel?
I
Like, is it
genuinely have no idea. I was
oh.
hoping
from
you
what I've
guys had more
seen, not
insight into
good.
that.
Yeah, from what I've seen, like I'm actually I found out visiting my parents for Easter that they apparently watched the first season and were looking forward to watching this episode. So I'm looking forward to in a few weeks finding out how they reacted. But
I'm
Mm.
kind of actually curious to see how my in-laws feel because they watched
yeah,
the first or some of the first season. I don't know if they finished it, but
but from what I've seen from various non-game players commenting over various platforms, not good. And let me just say, without Pedro Pascal, who is the star power here, and obviously Joel as the main character that everybody really attaches to because he is the main character in the first game, or first season and first game. Um, I'm curious how people are going, how what the viewership will look like, because as I've already said, Ellie comes off as completely insufferable in this adaptation. Dina, thankfully, is charismatic, and we didn't even talk about Jesse. Jesse, too, the actor who plays him,
oh
does a
yeah,
phenomenal job with what he's given.
that's
Um,
young Mazzino. He's great. He was in
um,
Beef. If you haven't watched Beef, go watch Beef. It was so good.
but Dina and Jesse, the actors, are really carrying a lot of the load there. We'll see how audiences react to just having that trio. And again, like I said, the actress playing Abby is she's working with on loose grounds with the material, but she seems to be a genuinely great actress. And again, she did this filming a few weeks after losing her mother to cancer,
Um,
and you can really feel that in the performance, regardless of the writing of it. So
All I can
we'll
say
see
is
if
like
audiences stay attached.
I don't want people that just watch the show and who are listening to this and who like Pedro Pascal to only you should never just watch a show for one actor. I mean, like there's a
yeah,
lot of good story here and I feel like it's a good story and I think don't like give up just because of that. There is a lot to tell. However, how can I say this? Uh I'm trying let me give me a minute. I want to make sure I don't spoil anything. Let me, let me see how I'm going to say this. Okay. I am curious with all the changes that are happening if they're going to help quell some of the criticisms that other people had of the game in terms of like how they structure things.
yeah. Um on that note, like I had some thoughts going in because we knew already. I think that uh I think this was renewed for 2 seasons. No, it was just renewed for season 3.
Yeah,
Before but or right before the second season started. So I don't think we knew, but I was thinking that the structure of the narrative is going to change from how it's presented in the game being adapted to television, and the way I thought it was going to be done is not what happened, and that's all I'll say. We'll be able to elaborate further in probably the next episode.
Hmm.
um but uh yeah, that being said, I have a few just like small details that I just wanted to talk about real quick
Hmm.
before we wrap up.
I can I just throw in another speculative thing because it's not in
Okay.
the game. This is one of the things they added, which of course is what caused the battle sequence. The whole smart infected, whatever it was called, shrieker or stalker. Plus
Yeah, the
the
infected.
plus the cordyceps roots growing inside Jackson itself.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if that's going to introduce an entirely separate subplot that remains in Jackson,
Hmm.
um,
Maybe.
which could be foreshadowing for game players major deviations from where certain characters are.
Yeah.
So I guess that will be interesting because that will be entirely new.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Anyway,
yeah, it
get
was
your
also
details.
interesting, like having like they talk about it. I think at the end of the first episode, with like them, or maybe was it What did they talk about it in dialogue, or am I conflating this with
Yes.
like the
So
after the
so
credits thing where they talk like about the
no.
leaving of
So if you're talking about what I think you are, Jesse does foreshadow the horde because he talks about how they found a bunch of them packing with their dead for
okay,
insulation. That's
yeah,
what
like
Abby comes across
yeah.
after she slides down a hill and her gun that's tightly slung around her somehow disappears into the ether.
I mean, she went down
Sorry,
a hill. It probably got caught on the hill and got unsnapped from her back. I
I
don't
don't
know,
know.
man.
It's a white hill. You think you would see a black rifle and a sling, but okay.
She slid on. Oh, Jesus Christ! All right, few small details. I just that tickled me personally.
Anyway,
In
the point is that yes, Jesse does tell Ellie about when they're walking in the beginning of the episode
yeah,
to Mari. He tells him that they saw a bunch of dead infested bodies that they're using like insulation, foreshadowing what Abby comes across
yeah,
and the
right,
horde that attacks them. Yeah.
right. Anyway, few small details that tickled me personally. In Ellie's room, I really liked seeing. I saw Pearl Jam's 10. I saw
Yes.
Nirvana's In Utero. Um, Ellie was listening to oh god, what song? Love Buzz, I think, off of Nirvana's Bleach, and it was also on like an original EP. Just like very grunge coded, very like Pacific Northwest coded setting. So loved that detail. I thought that was a lot of fun. Also, a character we never actually saw in the game, but like was here for a brief, I guess, cameo. Kat, Ellie's like ex-girlfriend that had that
Mm.
they like she wrote about in her diary, like their breakup and stuff, and like we
Oh, is
actually
that the one
see
that
her.
Dina is talking about in the beginning of the first
Yeah.
episode?
Well, yeah, and she's also like the one on the horse giving them shit when they're about to go into the supermarket.
Yeah.
To look around further. That's supposed to be Kat, her
Yeah,
Ellie's
the squad
ex-girlfriend.
leader who just sits around and let them do whatever they want. Yeah.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. So I thought that was fun. That was interesting. Um, yeah. I don't got a ton else to talk about.
I
Delilah,
mean,
did you have any other closing notes or?
No, I think it's good. I'm curious. I definitely want to see what happens. I was impacted, but I still have there's some things I didn't hit as much, and I'm just curious to see how things unfold because from playing the game and really liking the game, despite me understanding some of the criticisms, there were a lot of other criticisms that I think were ridiculous, and
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see how different things play out. Moreover, I just wanted to say that if you want to hear our perspectives about Joel dying at this point and also how we perceived his choices and what we think of him as a character, I feel like we went in more detail in like The Last of Us 1 and part 2 episode for the game, so you can check that out if you want.
Yeah, just be warned, that's gonna spoil you on
yeah.
the rest of
It's
Yeah.
the plot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically these first two episodes are the first few hours of the game setting up the conflicts with some minor changes and a few new things introduced. So if you know the game, you kind of know what happened, and it's hard for us to talk about it in too much
Well,
depth because it
look, we're
requires spoiling things in the game that may or may not happen in the show. Yeah.
and we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna start digging into that next, or in a few weeks when
And
two
and
two
if you
or
can't
more
wait,
episodes come out.
we have hours of content already, as Delilah said. Go back and listen to our episodes.
If you haven't played the video games, Naughty Dog just announced a $100 package that includes both of them.
Oh
So
boy.
Oh my god.
you can go pick that up for your PlayStation 5.
Neil
And
Druckmann went to Todd Howard and was like, "Man, you did all that with Skyrim? Hold my beer."
I was gonna say that.
I
It's
still think
funny.
Skyrim is worse, but
Oh no, it definitely is worse. Yeah.
yeah. Um Also, and one last closing thing, just to bring us full circle. Is it bad that one of the first thoughts I had when I realized Tati Gabrielle is in the show, was that, oh, I guess she's gonna get a sneak peek of what it's like to get vitriol and hate mail from Naughty Dog fans
Oh
before
gosh, yeah.
Intergalactic comes out.
Yep.
Oh, you're okay.
She's
So
she's the
that's the
yeah,
one. She's the medic or one of the medics.
she's
Eh,
Nora in this
Yeah, yeah,
show,
yeah.
and she's the lead actor in Naughty Dog's next game. So seeing that, I'm like, oh, good. She's gonna get a sneak peek of getting some
Yeah.
absolute unnecessary vitriol from people.
Yeah, I
I mean,
think
she
people
doesn't
are
really
too
say
focused on
much.
Bella.
Oh, I'm just joking, Jason.
Yeah.
Mostly.
I know. I mean, that's that. I mean, that's another thing. I mean, Delilah already said earlier. It's hard to tell who was who because none of them really say much, except for
I don't know. I picked up on it
yeah.
pretty quickly, but the yeah. But more to talk about as more episodes come out. So stay tuned as the season goes on. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, and you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Please leave us a comment. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you didn't like about these episodes or about this episode in particular of Reaper Spoils. And also make sure to like the episode, share it with your friends, your family, anyone that watched these 2 episodes and wants to hear 3 crazy people talk about it in like an obsessive context or way. Share the episode with them and just listen to us ramble. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, thank you so much. Please rate and review the show. 5 stars preferred. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. And yeah, I guess we'll see you next time for presumably episodes 3 and 4 of The Last of Us Season 2.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.